Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. In the early 90s, diplomats and leaders from Israel and Palestine came together in Oslo, Norway, to work out the Oslo Peace Treaty. It was an attempt at peace between the two countries that led to historical paths forward for them. Documentary filmmakers Mor Loushy and Daniel Sivan combined one-on-one interviews, diary entries, and video footage of the meetings between the leaders to give us a behind-the-scenes glimpse at history and diplomacy we may never see again. Let's take a look at the trailer for the Oslo Diaries.
The PLO was considered an extremist group.
That's quite an organization of terror.
The idea of meeting our occupiers did not appeal to me at all. But the freedom of Palestine demanded all of us to take high risks.
There was something very personal in peacemaking. It was a very human ambition.
We have become neighbors, at last.
In war, there are no victories, only victims. No war is ever finished unless it's being replaced by peace.
Is this a tale of triumph or defeat?
Everybody, please welcome directors of the Oslo Diaries, Mor Loushy and Daniel Sivan.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on this film. This is one of the stories that is so important when it comes, I think, to the history of liberal democracy in this world, and paths forward, paths not moving forward, roads less traveled. And I think it's so important to look at something like this right now, not just in regards to Palestine and Israel and their future, but again, the future of diplomacy and liberal democracies in this world. What started your venture in making this documentary? How did it begin for you?
First we did, our previous film was Censored Voices, that was about war. And we did several films about war, and we saw so many films about war, and we asked ourselves, but why isn't there a real film about peace or about the lack of peace? And, and this question was so deeply, disturbed us, because, what about our future for our kids? Where are we at now? I mean, we're still in the middle of this huge conflict, and no peace, in the future. And we said, we must tell the story. I mean, most of the people, also in Israel, most of the public doesn't really know what was there, behind the scenes, what was really happened, what they really signed. So we said, okay, we have to understand what happened exactly in Oslo. And then when we started searching and looking, we came across Ron Punstok's diary, one of the main negotiators, and it was written so personally, and then so we said, okay, this is a click for us for the film. And then we found a whole bunch of other diaries that sometimes they contradict each other, sometimes they tell the same story, and we said, okay, our films, we always like, to take a big historical event, but to tell it from a very personal point of view. And this was it, our negotiators, the story behind the scenes.
It's so fascinating, the idea that there are many, many, many movies about war, but there are never movies, be they documentary or fiction films, about peace and working towards peace. Was it difficult to make a movie about peace as thrilling as a movie about war can be?
Yes, actually. When we started pitching it, people just told us, wow, it's going to be boring like hell, because, it's a bunch of guys just sitting around a table. There's no blood, there's no explosions, no bullets flying through the air. They're just talking about trying to find a peaceful solution. Luckily,
humanizing each other, which is such a wonderful element of the film.
Well, luckily for us, the peace failed, and there was so much violence that, this film contains all the explosions and bloodshed you want. But no, on a personal... yes, I'm kidding, yeah. So, no, but on a personal level, it was really trying to find the story from within So we have Zinger, for example, which is this very rigid military lawyer, and he's meeting Abu Alaz, a Palestinian negotiator, for the first time. And, you know, he approaches him and he says, wow, like, you know, I'm going to meet this terrorist, this murderer, and Abu Alaz is going to meet this, you know, he was a symbol of the military law in the occupied territories. These are two people that were brought up on hating each other. And Abu Alaz approaches him and he kisses him on both cheeks. And Zinger is shocked, first of all, because, you know, he says, a terrorist is kissing me. But second, he says, like, you know, this is the first time a man kissed me. And he was just shocked. So for us, it's really the little stories behind it that make it so passionate.
I agree, and going back to this, I briefly mentioned humanizing each other. This is the first time where a lot of these leaders are starting to meet the people that they call the enemy and learning about their family, learning about their past. And there's a wonderful quote that somebody has in it that I'm going to butcher right now, so forgive me, which is that neither side basically has ownership of tragedy or of the pain that has been inflicted and caused. Is that the quote? Excuse me? Yeah. It's a really wonderful moment. How important was it for you as filmmakers to show both sides of the conflict and the pain?
It was crucial for us, of course, especially I think in the Israeli media. You know, you don't hear so much the Palestinian voice. So we had really the opportunity to show both sides, and both sides are so fascinating, and really there were human connections between them, and that still, you know, with all of the war that we're still, Uri, Savir, and Abu Alaz, our two main characters, still remain best friends until today. So really, like, the humanization of the diplomacy of it, like the such a huge leap that they took from being enemies to really meeting each other, seeing each other, knowing each other, you know, being out there in the snow of Norway, in this, you know, very calm atmosphere, and really talking about the painful things of the conflict. So for us, the humanization of the negotiators, of course, was crucial, and this is where the emotion comes, you know, that if they can do it, we can do it as well. We are people from both sides. So it was the small stories, the human stories, and not, you know, the details of the agreement was the most important thing for us.
The film packs a huge punch, and I think not just because we see the collapse of the treaties, but this idea of the small human stories once again being forgotten for the sake of geopolitical maneuvers and sort of sly political dealings, essentially, that lead to more conflict. Was that something that you were aware of, that focusing so much on these minuscule human moments would make those final moments of the film where, you know, the far right kind of takes over even more impactful?
Yeah, I mean, you know, for us, it's very hard to relate to geographical borders, or when the Palestinians say the refugees, we are talking about hundreds of thousands or millions of people who want to come back home, and you can't really relate to it because it's just numbers and figures. When you have Abu Alaz, this one character that you really relate to, and he's coming back to his hometown, after years of exile, you can really understand what these refugees are going through. And when you have this, you know, kind of goofy history professors that are going against the law to meet these Palestinians in Oslo, and they're taking this very personal risk of they might end up in jail because if they're caught, it's called treason back then, meeting these PLO members. For us, it's really, that's the way you can relate. And when you see these guys who really gave everything they could for this peace treaty, and you see it start to collapse, you can really understand the pain, not of them, but of both societies.
I see parallels to a degree with the United States and our sort of right-wing party, and with something like the Iran deal, where you have something, not necessarily a peace treaty per se, but you have a treaty that is worked out without weapons being fired, and then you have a sort of nationalistic side of the country that wants to tear that down for political purposes. Do you see incidents like that as another reason to tell this story? Do you see this story having impacts outside of just the conflict between Israel and Palestine?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. I think diplomacy in general has become kind of a dirty word worldwide. It's much more, it gives you more rating or definitely more clicks or likes on social networks if you say, we want to bomb the hell out of them. Everybody wants, just to say, I'm angry, I'm going to declare war. It won't give you much respect if you say, you know what, I'm going to endure just another incitement by the other side and go for a peaceful solution. And in Israel, peaceful solutions are something that for the past 20 years has become a really dirty word. No government, no political party says we promise you peace, we're going for a peaceful solution. They just stop talking about it. They talk about the economy. You have that also in the US, in your last election, people didn't go for this, foreign kind of affair saying, oh, I'm going to break peace with whoever. They said, we're going to make your economy better. And that's really what's happening now. I mean, I think it's so important to keep this diplomacy going because it saves lives.
And it's so easy, to go on fear for leaders, to say, to use this fear and just like say, okay, the war is the only solution. But actually, the bravest thing is to go on a solution of peace and to give this a chance and not just like Netanyahu is doing, like saying, I think that most of the people want peace, but just scared. And it's very easy to step on those points as a leader and use it.
How does a film like this, what is the response to a film like this in Israel today?
Well, of course, actually, when we released it in Israel just a few days ago, it was broadcast as a series Sunday, Monday, Tuesday of last week. And we kind of expected people to say, okay, it's nice, it's interesting, it's a bit nostalgic, but everybody's for peace. And we didn't really expect the lashbacks that we got.
You got people lashed out.
People really, took it as this, radical film of how can you suggest this peace with the Palestinians in Israel and in Palestine. Oslo is really the symbol of the failure of the peace process. For them, Oslo brought, for Israelis, Oslo brought the terrorism and the terror attacks. For Palestinians, it's the ultimate prolongation of the occupation. And after Oslo, both sides just lost all hope of a peaceful solution. And when we brought out the series and it was aired, people were very emotional about it. People didn't look at it as no nostalgia, but as how dare you promote Oslo again.
But, I think that also I feel that we did a great job because the discourse of peace was again on the table, Suddenly there were so many articles about the Oslo Accords and about peace. And so we as filmmakers, I feel that our duty, is to put some light, on the things that are forgotten already. And I think that in all of the last elections, the word peace in Israel has not been on the table. And with this film and what happened last week, the press that we got, the media that we got in Israel, I think that we had a lot of many articles that are talking about it and putting back the discourse of peace on the table. And this is, huge.
By what happened last week, are you referring to the premiere of the film?
Yeah,
okay,
in Israel.
Excuse me. Yeah, sorry. In the United States, it's really hard to get any news outside of us right now. We're just all consumed by the daily onslaught of what's happening here.
Understandable.
I'm sure it actually is. Pardon me for not remembering this historical figure's name, who passed away in February, but he gave his last interview in your film.
Shimon Peres.
Shimon Peres, thank you. He has a beautiful quote that without peace there is just war. So essentially peace has to happen. And he is still beloved in Israel, I would imagine, right?
He's very beloved after he passed.
Wow.
Yeah, he was very controversial throughout his life. He was the symbol of the dreamy, delusional peace lovers, as the right wing saw him. And he was really somebody that had a lot of faith in this peace process. And the quote you brought from him is really something that, you know, we should emphasize. He says, no war is ever finished because you can't win a war. It's not like, you know, in the Middle Ages, medieval ages, that, you know, people would just, you know, conquer another castle and they say, okay, now we have that castle and it's done. You know, if you go and you occupy another country, and it doesn't matter if it's Palestine, Iraq, Afghanistan, or what have you.
Very aware in this country that wars are never done.
They're going to lash out.
Yeah. What was it like interviewing him? I mean, I guess it was his last interview. You wouldn't have known while interviewing him that it was going to be his last interview. But what was it like talking to him?
It was, I think, a very special interview because it was a very honest interview. And politicians usually, as you know, are not in all the interview, are honest. And because I think, I don't know, we had the last interview and we do feel that it was very honest. And this quote that you gave before, I think, you know, it's important because in Israel, the status quo right now is so comfortable for everyone. But I don't think it will last, you know. It's not possible that it will last. I mean, something would happen. It's not possible that it would happen this way, that, okay, we're just not going to contain the war all the time. I mean, this is not the future that we are asking for our children. So he gave us some last wonderful words, and we were lucky enough to use them.
Is there, pardon me again for not being fully aware of this, is there a left-wing faction of Israel that supports peace and talks about it, but is essentially like the far left in this country, unelectable and, you know, like Chomsky-esque?
Yeah, this is like the real tragedy. I mean, you know, when we just started like research stages and, you know, and starting to film the characters and read the journals, Hila Medalia, our producer, which is really like, you know, such a creative part of the team. I'm sorry she's not with us here. But she came and said like, okay, you need to finish this film like super fast because I heard some rumors that Bibi Netanyahu is gonna break peace and it's gonna happen like in the coming months and your film will be not relevant.
Break peace, meaning he...
broker peace. Like he's gonna just close the deal. It's gonna happen.
He had some deals behind the table, you know.
Yeah, that's the same way.
When was this?
That was like 2-3 years ago. And
was that
she
prior?
said like, okay, like we need to go to Sundance like right now. And we were like, oh, the film isn't shot yet. So she was really like, you know, saying it's gonna happen. And, you know, we looked at each other and said like, I don't know, like maybe finally we'll get this dream of peace to the Middle East. Maybe it's okay that, you know, nobody will buy our film and it will fail. That's a price we're willing to pay. But sadly, we didn't pay that price, and it's not going anywhere. Now, you know, the latest rumors are, whoa, Trump has something in his sleeve. He has this brilliant peace agreement he's going to share with all of us just soon.
Let me share something with you as an American. Don't ever expect Trump to have anything brilliant in his sleeve. Like,
yeah, well,
he's got stuff in his sleeve, but I don't think it's anything brilliant, you know?
No comment. So
I heard Jared was in charge of the Israeli-Palestine peace treaty.
Yeah.
Don't expect anything there other than maybe a failing building.
Yeah, like the latest things up his sleeve were moving the Israeli embassy to Jerusalem and not giving the Palestinians anything, and just recently cutting all their funds. So I don't think that's the good way to broker peace in the Middle East. But anyhow, I mean, you know, when you look now at the Israeli politics, the Israeli map, not only you have Netanyahu, which is very openly saying for the past 20 years, I don't believe in peace, I don't believe we have a partner, I do believe in settlements, I believe in the greater Israel, I don't want to go the same road Oslo went, I don't want to bring peace. But also the opposition from the left are very, very inactive. None of them are saying we're going to bring you peace. And all of them are just competing amongst themselves, saying, no, we are more Zionist, we have more love for Israel, we are more patriotic. And none of them are actually saying we're going to separate from the Palestinians, divide the land, and go towards peace. So I think the people who are real, you know, peace promoters are maybe 15% of the government in a good day.
We have so much in common. Let's get some questions from our audience. Who's a question? Right here.
Hi. First of all, congratulations on this film. This is quite an achievement. I just have a question about U.S. filmmakers and documentarians. How did you get your start? Like, what kind of drove you to be documentarians over, I don't know, other mediums?
I think, you know, that when I studied in film school, and I knew, I don't know, that I want to do, you know, films that matters, films that has an impact on my society, films that then I was naive, that will change reality, that will, you know, to fight for the good. And I think that that's why we both connected to documentary immediately. And I mean, I love this world, and it's such a world full with possibilities. I think especially now, you know, like the documentary world and the narrative world has, like, the boundaries are really, so for us we do social, political films, and I think that in Israel, especially now, you know, it's so important because not so many political films are being made in the past years. You know, like we sometimes sit in boards where people submit films, and they're, I think, self-censorship more and more. And that's why, you know, when we make a political film, even though people can scream at us and shout at us at screening, or just, you know, talk and make a debate, so for me, this just filled my world. So this is our motivation.
Yeah. I mean, for me, you know, what I love about documentaries really is that, you know, the script can be absolutely ridiculous. And, you know, if it was scripted, if it was fiction, nobody would believe it. So, like, you know, if we even take, like, from this film, the assassination of Rabin, it's something that was almost unbelievable. I mean, you know, this is a guy who was doing this rally for peace, and he thought nobody would come. Really, he was like in a really low point in his life. And then this rally, suddenly hundreds of thousands of people came to support him. And he sang this song, which was a censored song in Israel, which is called Song for Peace. It's this very radical song saying, like, we want peace now, we don't believe in anything, just give us peace. And when he finished singing the song, he folded it up because he didn't know the words by heart, and he put them in his pocket. And then going down the stairs from this rally, he was shot, and you have, like, the bullet going straight through the song. And, you know, Rabin was assassinated, he died, and all you have is this, you know, page that is splattered with blood over this song for peace. And that's like something that if you would write it in a script, it would be so ridiculously, you know, tacky. And on the other hand, it's beautiful. And really, I mean, that's something you have only in documentaries. So I love that.
Next question.
Hi. I was just wondering what fears and trepidations you had upon shooting this very politically charged film.
The fears. Ooh, I had so many fears in this film. You know, we we edit together, and we are a couple. We have 2 children, and wow, we shouted at each other so much in the past 2 years. You know,
I was expecting the fears to be like, oh, political retaliation. You're like, no, just we were fighting. We were fighting.
It was, and all the debates were on the political level. You know, like, should we really go into the details of the Oslo Accords, or should we do something, you know, that will really, you know, play with the story and really gives hope for the future? And so of course you have fears if, you know, we took, for example, the Palestinians' diaries. And I was so, Daniel, but we're Israelis. Are we using this narrative correctly? Is it ethic to do it? Is it ethic to, you know, to take their voice and edit it? Of course, that for us, any film is subjective. If someone else would take these materials, he would have told a completely different story. So all the time, like, are we telling the right story? You know, what is the weight? I mean, that because when people will now search the Oslo Accords, hopefully they will see this film. So have we told, you know, the right story, the correct story, the story that I can wake up tomorrow morning, look at the mirror, and say, okay, I did it correctly. And so I was, yeah, but we're proud.
Yeah. I mean, as to political retaliation, that never really interested me because, you know, we're quite used to people, you know, writing comments on web pages, you know, calling for this. I mean, for me, like, you know, the biggest fear is just being ignored. And that's what happens to these peace negotiations in Israel and in Palestine. And, you know, for me, as long as somebody says, you know, I saw this film and I hated it, that's, you know, the biggest compliment. Like, he actually they saw it. And that's amazing. Yes.
I wanna go back because I'm curious. I always love hearing about this as a couple and working together and fighting over the storylines and in the editing room. How did you guys come to a happy place at the end of it, or at the end of those fights? How did you
Don't ask this question today, you know?
Oh, no.
Yeah, like on the way here, okay, like from DC to New York, like Mor lost her wallet and her...
Sorry, that sucks.
She left them on the plane and like, you know...
Because you forgot it in your seat. But,
yeah, and then like driving here... Yeah.
It's the best.
Yeah, and then like driving here, like our baby girl just like, she threw up on the whole car and like twice. So that's we are not in a happy place, but I mean...
But you make damn good films.
You know, every film, we always say, okay, this is the last film we're going to do together. And then the next film, it's like, okay, so let's sit and write the synopsis. And like, this is our 4th film together. And, you know, I think it's a gift at the end of the day.
You know, I think that's the case with most directors, whether they're working with a partner or not. You finish a film and you're like, I'm never going to do this again. That was such a hard thing to do. I fought with everybody. I fought with myself. And it's been 3 years and now it's done. And then a couple months go by and you get an idea in the back of your head and you start going.
And he's the best partner, you know, because I think that, yes, because we really, you know, when we fight on film. And because there's no ego between us, we're a couple. And I think that the film comes first. Yeah. And this is... You know, I don't think you can find this common language with anyone and to really know that the film matters, you know, that you fight for your film. And this is what I love about, you know, us working together. And it's also, I think, the debates and shouting is very creative.
Apparently, yeah.
Yeah. One more.
Hi. I was wondering if at this point you think that peace would be more or less achievable if the U.S. stopped being involved.
So, I mean, sadly, the U.S. isn't really involved. I mean, I would love it if the U.S. would get involved. If the U.S. would tell Israel, look, we are your biggest supporters, we are your biggest allies, we will always have your back, but you really need to move forward on this.
The Obama administration did a kind of version of that at the end of their tenure at the UN, right? Kerry came forward and did a little tongue lashing, but it didn't really mean much.
Yeah, but tongue lashing isn't enough. I mean, really, us as Israelis, we need your help. We need the US to come and say, like, you know, because we have your back, we can help you move forward. But you do need to give up some things. You do need to give some concessions. And that means you will have to evacuate some settlers, or at least, you know, freeze the settlements. You need to think of some kind of resolution. But because it's the unpopular vote throughout the years, and it doesn't matter if it's the Bush administration or the Obama administration, the current one, you're just not doing your job.
And I think, you know, that it's for the best of, as we see it, it's for the best of our country, you know, just because if there won't be a solution, this is the danger, you know, for if you look many years ahead, this is the real danger. And I think we do need help to get there. And if the US would do it, I believe that it would be, you know, for the sake of my future, for the sake of our country. And it's important.
Now, the U.S. didn't actually do much in regards to this period of time, right? They kind of stepped in at the last minute and, you know, did the ceremony, but.
But the ceremony was a huge thing. I mean, you know, everyone remembers the handshake of Rabin and Arafat on the White House lawn with Bill Clinton. And I think that was a huge part, you know, of the breakthrough. Two enemies. And if you'll see in the film, you know, that Rabin didn't even want to shake Arafat's hand. You know, Clinton just somehow, you know, put them together. And then he told Peres, I shook his hand, it was hell, now it's your turn. So it was really, really difficult for Rabin to do that handshake. And this handshake, I think, was the first sign of, yes, they're enemies, but they shook hands, and there is a possible solution on you know, in the future. And so, you know, it was a big thing that the United States did the ceremony and supported it. And I think that we're not in the same, even though, you know, we don't have peace solution, but I do think that today, when people look at the solution, you know, in the early 90s, people didn't say, okay, two-state solution is the mainstream. And today, if you ask most of the people, they will tell you, yeah, we need to go to a two-state solution. So this is a huge step, and we should look also, you know, on the positive things that occurred in Oslo and to really move forward with them.
And would you say that most Israelis are in support of a two-state solution? It's just that the current government and supporters of this particular government are sort of, while they maybe pay lip service to the idea of a two-state solution, aren't necessarily for any kind of concessions, as you said?
I believe, or I hope to believe, that most Israelis want peace more than the greater Israel, that most Israelis want a peaceful life more than the holy places. But they do want a leader that will take them by the hand and say, trust me, we are going the right direction. And until Israelis start demanding peace from their leaders, they won't get it. Like, the minute Israelis go to the polling stations and say, you know, we are going to vote for whoever's going to promise us a peaceful solution, then they'll get that leader.
And it's so easy to walk on fear, like we said before also here in Israel. It's so easy, you know, to say, oh, no, we will never be friends, you know. Terror attacks will always, you know, be a part of our life. And I think that, yeah, the brave part is to say, yeah, we believe in it. And I think that the fear is a crucial thing in moving forward to a peace solution. And I hope that we'll be there one day.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the film, The Oslo Diaries.
Thank you so much.
It's premiering on HBO, right? When is it premiering on HBO?
September 13th.
September 13th on HBO. Watch it. It's an incredible document of this period of time and a really great job by the filmmakers. Give them another round of applause, please.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.